Hello everyone, welcome back to Fraud on the Telly. With Critical Role starting its newest Exandria Unlimited mini-series Calamity on May 26, 2022, I thought it would be fun to go over everything we know about the Calamity event so far, seeing as the mini-series will take place during the Calamity itself. In addition, I have a strong suspicion the events of Exandria Unlimited Calamity will be of great importance of the future of Campaign 3, as Matt's newest book, Call of the Netherdeep, is intrinsically tied to the Calamity and one of its greatest heroes, Alyxian. Now, parts of this video will be my opinion and speculation, so if you disagree with me or if I get something wrong, just let me know in the comments down below, as it's almost impossible to get everything right when you're digging through hours and hours of Critical Role content. As well, it's impossible to avoid spoilers when covering a topic like this, so consider yourselves warned. If you enjoyed the video and learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out some of our other Critical Role content. Let's get right into it. So, what is the Calamity? Simple explanation, the Calamity is a war that was fought between the prime deities, the good guys, and the betrayer gods, the bad guys. The war lasted close to 100 years, destroying and changing much of the world of Exandria. This event would signal the end to what was known as the Age of Arcanum, the second age of Exandria, in which mortals tested the limits of the arcane, resulting in what would be known as the Divergence. The Divergence being the creation of the Divine Gate, which prevented the gods from returning to the material plane. You following me so far? For a time reference, the first episode of Critical Role took place in 810 PD, post-Divergence. The Calamity then is theorized to have occurred roughly 1,000 years before the exploits of Vox Machina, and its events shaped much of how the modern Exandria looks and functions. To better understand the Calamity, we need to go back farther, to the founding age of Exandria. At this time, there existed beings known as the Primordials that lived in Exandria, who took offense to the newly created peoples inhabiting their worlds. A conflict arose between the gods who wished to protect the peoples of Exandria and the Primordials, along with the gods who sided with them, who would forever be brandished as the betrayer gods. If you're a Critical Role or D&D fan, I'm sure a bunch of these spooky evil gods will sound familiar. Asmodeus, the Lord of the Hells, Bane, the Strife Emperor, Grumsh, the Ruiner, Lolth, the Spider Queen, Thardasdun, the Chained Oblivion, Tiamat, the Scaled Tyrant, Torog, the Crawling King, Vecna, the Whispered One, and Zahir, the Cloaked Serpent. After the Battle of the Founding, these betrayer gods were banished from the material plane, only to be freed by one mage, Vespin Chloras, who released them. If that name sounds familiar, it's because it was mentioned recently on Critical Role Campaign 3. The betrayers, free to wander the world, found their own kingdom, Gordranis, located in Xhorhas. The present-day city of Rosohna now stands where this city once rested. After building their power, the betrayer gods would launch a surprise assault on Vasselheim, revealing themselves to the rest of the world. However, Vasselheim would stand with the help from the prime deities. This would stand to be the start of the Calamity, the ultimate fight of good versus evil. Now, there are many events that take place throughout the Calamity. It's very long, almost 100 years, if not more. Much of it we just don't know as the viewer, and what we do know is hard to place in order of events, so I'm gonna run through some of the major moments that occurred within the Calamity. Extremely early on in the war, the betrayer gods suffered a major setback as Lolth the Spider Queen is struck down at the hands of Kord, who banishes her to the Abyss. Her drow soldiers were forced to flee to the Underdark. Not long after the Divergence, a group of these drow would emerge from the Underdark worshipping a being known as the Luxem. They would found the first post-Calamity society in Xhorhas, the Kryn dynasty, led by Den and Leylas Kryn. The Wild Mother and her worshippers would defeat Bane, the Strife Emperor, freeing his army of goblinoids from their servitude to him. This would happen on the Banesfell Plateau, which would later become Gwasar. The battle scarred the land so greatly, it would never again support plant life. As well, during the Calamity, the Raven Queen's angels saved her from a near-death experience with Thardasdun, but these angels were all killed in the process. It's said, post-Calamity, these angels were reborn as the Kenku people. The Prime Deities, along with many of their champions, would score a great victory at the Betrayer's Rise, near the city of Bazzoxan, which would allow the Prime Deities and their forces to reach the city of Gordranis. At some point during the Calamity, it is said the betrayer gods and prime deities came to an armistice in order to destroy the flying city of Aeor, a mage-run civilization that had developed magical weapons strong enough to kill a god. Fans of Campaign 2 are very familiar with this city. Alyxian, a Ruidus-born man in Wildmount, would become champion to the gods in the Calamity, bearing blessings from Avandra, Corellin, and Sehanine, making him a demigod. Side note, I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of these names. Alyxian would sacrifice himself to save Marquette and Exandria, being trapped within the Netherdeep below the city of Ank'Harel. Remember this guy because we're coming back to him later. He's super important. The final battle of the Calamity occurred at the Barb Fields, ultimately resulting in the destruction of Gordranus. Torog would be banished to a portion of the Far Realm. Sarenrae, believing all of those who are corrupted could be saved, is betrayed by Asmodeus, who then kills almost all of her worshippers. This is why the worship of Sarenrae for much of modern Exandria is seen as rare. Well, at least before Pike came around. As well, post-Calamity, many priests attempt to erase Sarenrae from history, as they believed the god's trusting nature is what led to the destruction of her followers. Ioun as well was injured with her battle with Tharizdun. Her sorrow would cause her primary temple to sink underground, diminishing her presence in Vasselheim. This temple, by the way, would exist near where modern-day Whitestone is. Pellar would plant a tree at the site she was wounded. This would later become the Sun Tree. Fun fact, Ioun is still recovering from this wound to this day, as we saw in Campaign 1. As we stated earlier with the Kenku, many creation myths for species that reside in Exandria arose from the Calamity. It is said that Bane created the different goblinkin from the Drenasar, a humanoid race that lived in Wildmount. During the Calamity, most of the elves fled to the Feywild, but some remained in the material plane. One group, who were renowned horse lords, are said to have all been slain from a burst of magic that occurred when the god Corellin stabbed Grunch in the eye. As a gesture of mercy, it is said Corellin revived these elves, making them the first centaurs. It is said that both catfolk and gnolls were created during the Calamity. Gnolls specifically were said to have been created when a group of hyenas were caught within a blast of energy that occurred on the arrival of a demon prince in Exandria. As well, Dragonborn are said to be made from Tiamat and Bahamut, each of them using as soldiers during the Calamity. They would eventually earn their freedom. Exandria would be forever changed by the great battles of the Calamity. It's said roughly 1/3 of the planet's population survived the fighting, with the city of Vasselheim being the only surviving civilization. Much magical and technological knowledge was lost subsequently because of this for great lengths of times, such as the study of dunamancy and the use of broomstone, the magical stone that causes objects to lift. This is what was used to make cities like Aor fly. Many legendary magical weapons as well, such as the Vestiges of Divergence and the Arms of the Betrayer, were lost to history. For example, one bow Thenfrest until it was claimed by Lady Vixalia. Most pre-Divergence history was lost, leaving little knowledge on the Calamity and the Age of Arcanum to the modern people in Exandria. As well, the Calamity shaped the actual land of Exandria. For example, separating the continents of Wildmount and Glussar, which were formerly connected by a land bridge. Zorhas was once a densely forested area, now resides as a deserted wasteland after the battles. The coastal paradise of Miskith Strand was defied by the Betrayer gods, turning it into what is now known as Blightshore. As well, the battles between Pelor and Tharizdun would create the Alabaster Sierras, their power infusing the mountains with residuum in what would become modern-day Whitestone. This is just a few of the many geographical changes in Exandria caused by the Calamity. As well, a few interesting characters make their first appearance in the Calamity, the first being the Laughing Hand. The Laughing Hand was once known as Ganix, a warrior who fought against the betrayer god Torog in the Calamity. Upon his defeat, Torog would then capture Ganix, corrupting him and transforming him into the Laughing Hand, a now undying servant who fans of Campaign 2 are extremely familiar with. As well, another big, bad, scary baddie from Campaign 2, Ukutoa, makes his first appearance in the Calamity. A creation of Zahir, one of the Betrayer gods, Ukutoa being left in Exandria post-Calamity. Masterless and possessing immense power, the creature would begin to see itself as a divine entity, becoming patron to those who seek power from the sea. I'm curious to see what segment of the Calamity Exandria Unlimited is going to cover, as the event is massive if you couldn't tell already. I do have a bit of a hunch though. You see, I think Campaign 3's broader story is heavily linked with the events of the Calamity, very specifically the battle that occurred in Marquette in the city of Kael Morro, which Ank'Harel was built on top of. You see, Marquette was once a green, lush landscape pre-Calamity, but during the Calamity, the betrayer god Grumsh attempted to strike the center of the city with such a force that it would destroy the entire continent. However, the god's champion, the Ruidus-born Alyxian, blocked the said attack. As a result, Marquette survived, along with the rest of Exandria, but much of the lush landscape in Marquette was reduced to desert. As well, the city of Kael Morro was pushed underground, and somehow, with Alyxian's ties to the moon of Ruidus, a planar rift was torn, I guess, creating the Netherdeep. As Matt's newest campaign guide is called The Call of the Netherdeep, It makes sense that Campaign 3, and thus Exandria Unlimited, would focus on this particular aspect of the story in some capacity. Further evidence for this is Imogen's link with Ruidus, the campaign taking place in Marquette, Matt referencing Vespin Chorus, the mage that freed the Betrayer gods, and finally Matt making a few vague references to the allegiance of Allsight, the group currently responsible for excavating Kael Morrow. As always, though, this is just my theory, in my opinion, and I'm probably wrong on at least half of this, but legit, I would be actually shocked if the campaign doesn't feature the Netherdeep at some point in some kind of way. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What did I miss about the Calamity? There's so much stuff it actually seemed impossible and unnecessary to include at all. However though, if you're a nerd like me and want to know all the gritty details, I'll leave a link to the Critical Role wiki down below, as it was extremely instrumental in helping me find all of the informations and reference links to all the moments throughout Critical Role where Matt gives us Calamity lore dump info. As always, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Follow my socials for updates. Click another video on screen now, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Peace, love. Adieu.